Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Coffee Break presented by Bath Fitter. We've got Will Peterson hanging out with us on this Monday. Will, good morning. How was your weekend?
It was really good, Rachel, but my Missouri Tigers lost to a 15 seed for the second time in the last 11 years. All my friends thought, oh, it's this big gift. We get Princeton in the second round. We're going to the Sweet 16. Everything's so exciting. And then Mizzou pulls a Mizzou and loses by 15 points to Princeton in a game they were never really in. So it was a good weekend, but college basketball can be a cruel reminder every once in a while, and that's what it was for me this weekend.
No, for sure. Elizabeth and Troy, good morning. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Coffee Break. Will, let's get into March Madness, though, because there were quite a few upsets, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming. But also, did your family have some connection to, like, Princeton, too?
Yeah, so my parents went to Princeton actually,
Nice.
and I went to Missouri, so it was a little bit of a rivalry battle back and forth. But I don't think anyone expected Princeton to be on the right side of it and Mizzou to be on the wrong side of it. So they were cool about it. I think they're pretty darn pumped though. Their school's going to the Sweet 16. Although they're down in Florida, Princeton plays at 9 o'clock on Friday night. I think already making plans of how they're going to stay up late for that one. But you know what? That's a first world problem. The 15-seeded Princeton Tigers are in the Sweet 16.
Have a shot of espresso, you'll be good to go. They'll last throughout the game. Okay, biggest game or biggest surprise to you when it came to the games this weekend?
I mean, I don't want to sound like a homer because we just talked about it, but it's Princeton, right? Like a 15 seed going all the way to the Sweet 16. They've got the longest odds to win the national title by a mile.
Yeah.
They'll get Creighton, who I know you saw yesterday down at Ball Arena, beat Baylor.
They look
But a
good.
15 is not supposed to make it this far. But Rachel, the other one was Fairleigh Dickerson. FDU last night had a real shot against Florida Atlantic, and just kind of fell apart in the last couple minutes, which was a bummer because then they would have been the story, a 16 going all the way. But everyone's bracket is pretty much busted. If your bracket's still in good shape, then good for you. But I want to hear about your day. You were at Ball for like 6 hours, right? That's two exciting games you got, particularly the late one, TCU Gonzaga. Drew Timme, who I feel like has been at Gonzaga for 19 years, really took over in that second half.
Okay, I swear he's been around for forever, like you said. Fantastic player. I would say the stash is even more glorious in person too. So they were both really good games. Obviously, I didn't stay on Friday night for the TCU game. So I was a little sad because that one came down to the wire. So I was like, oh man, I really hope we get a game that like comes down to the wire. And I kind of got that last night with the TCU Gonzaga game, but they were both really good games. One thing I noticed, I was lucky. I stole somebody's seat who was like right up on the court, which was
Ooh,
cool.
nice.
I know, right? I'm just stealing seats out here. But it is so much faster paced than you think. Like the footwork that these players have are absolutely incredible. And that was kind of my biggest takeaway is when you're watching college basketball, you're like, oh yeah, like they're moving really fast. You see them huffing and puffing. But when you're watching it on a TV, I feel like you don't get the actual like dedication part from the athlete of like, holy smokes, they are absolutely running. Their footwork is incredible. It is so physical. It is so dominant. Like that was my biggest takeaway. They would throw the ball right by me, and I legitimately would go like this because I was like, holy smokes, that thing is going so fast. And like, if they miss it, it's going to smack me right in the face. So it was a really cool experience. I have an In the Sports Office vlog coming later today, which will be exciting. So I hope people can see a little bit behind the scenes. But for me, the biggest like game or weird thing that happened this weekend, did you watch the Kansas game?
Yes, although that was going on during the Missouri game. So I was at a bar and we
Nice.
were super locked in on Mizzou, but all of a sudden we're all like, wait, Kansas, Arkansas, that's like a 1 point game with 1 minute left. So our attention was a little distracted, but yeah, fill me in on it.
Okay, so it was the last play of the game essentially was when he tried to miss the free throw so that they could
Right.
rebound and try and get it. And it goes in. Like he purposely tries to miss it and then the basketball god said, "Nope, it's just going in. Sorry, you guys aren't winning this one." And I was just like, I've never seen that where they purposely tried to miss it and then the basket just goes in anyways. And I see RJ's comment, Rachel, we're just used to watching CU and CSU. Tourney teams are on a higher level. Yeah, no disrespect to the Rams or the Buffs, but yeah, yesterday was just crazy. But back to that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the speed because and I won't make this too Mizzou-centric. This will be my last Mizzou thing of the show. But when I was in college, my senior year, they were a 2 seed in the tournament. And that's the other time they lost to a 15 seed. They lost to Norfolk State. And, we were there with all –
that team?
What's that?
Was MPJ a part of that team?
No, this was like 5-6 years before MPJ. This was 2020.
Okay.
So, but it was fun because I had, I'd been in sports media at Mizzou, so I'd gotten to know these guys, right? Because we were all there together for 4 years. They were the basketball players. I was the journalism major.
Sure.
And they were a 2 seed in the tournament. Again, they lost to a 15 seed, which was a total buzzkill. But the point of the story is you mentioned the speed. They asked me one day, I was a high school basketball player. I'm not anywhere near a Division I basketball player, but I can hold my own on a basketball court. They asked me if I wanted to play pickup with them at the Missouri Rec Center. And I went and played in this pickup game, Rachel, with these guys who are D1 players, a 2 seed in the tournament. And it's exactly what you said. It was the speed of the game that blew my mind. And we were just playing pickup at the Rec. We weren't playing on a stage in front of 18,000 people. But my head was spinning trying to track the basketball. I swear I was on one end of the court and the ball's going in the hoop on the other end. And then I get my bearings and it's coming back to my end. And it was just like, okay, this is why you could play 3A high school basketball, but you can't play Division I basketball because the speed from middle-level Colorado high school to big-time Division I is just insane. I can't imagine what the NBA is like because just being on a court with elite college basketball players just absolutely blew my mind.
Oh my gosh, and they're like shoving their whole body, and like sometimes the players don't move at all. Like Timmy literally did move on some occasions, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like full body like throttles into each other. It was crazy. It was so much fun. If you ever get the experience to go down to an NCAA tournament, highly, highly, highly recommend. It is definitely so cool, and the atmosphere is so much fun because no matter what, even if you don't have a team you're like rooting for, you're still in it because you always kind of want to see the upsets too. So it was definitely fun. Highly recommend. But the Avs, Will, man, are they on a freaking hot streak? They had a perfect road trip. How are you feeling? Because I want to get excited about the Avs, but I'm still a little hesitant because of the injuries. But the big names are also showing up. I mean, Makar, McKinnon, Miko, they all had goals or all got points on Saturday, right? Saturday against Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday morning against Detroit, the 5-1 win to cap the road trip was a fitting way to end it because, Rachel, they went 4-0-0. They got all 8 possible points. And in 3 of the 4 games, they scored 8 goals, 5 goals, and 5 goals. Yep. And the one game they didn't have a big total was the grinder 2-1 win over Toronto. So they're getting hot at the right time. And I don't think anyone in the West wants to see them. They're right there with Dallas and Minnesota to win the Central Division. We've talked about how the East is tougher, but guess what? The East has to play the East to get to the final. And I don't think there's anyone in the West that wants to play the Avs. It's all coming together for Colorado at the exact right time, and that is with the additions of Gabriel Landeskog and Josh Manson and Eric Johnson, and even at this point Arturi Lehkonen hopefully still coming back for the playoffs. So if they're this good now, what are they going to look like when they add 4 or 5 key players back to the lineup? It just is a reminder. It's what DMAC has talked about on the drive, and I believe he's talked about it with you. Someone asked Nathan McKinnon up in one of those Canadian cities, are you worried about the playoffs? And Nathan pulled a classic. Nathan was like, no, teams should be worried about us. We're the champs, and until someone comes and rips the Stanley Cup from us, we're going to continue to be the champs. And, oh, by the way, when you go 4-0-0 on a road trip and you score at least 5 goals in 3 of the 4 games, that's a good reminder to the rest of the league, like, yeah, we've had a little bit of a up and down year, and yeah, we've battled injuries, but there is just no reason to think, Rachel, that the Avalanche won't win the West and could win the Stanley Cup. Things are clicking for them at the exact right time.
And they're a phenomenal road team. Like, they were the same way last year, which is why, no one was really worried when they went on the road. It was more so of, can they get the wins at home? Which, it sounds so ridiculous when you say that as a sports fan, because you always, always, always are like, oh, they're so good at home, yada, yada. But they're a really good road team, and obviously where they're at kind of right now in the playoffs, that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I think they looked more relaxed on the road last year, right? Like, even the difference between Game 5 at home against Tampa, where the crowd was going crazy and they looked so tight. And then game 6 down at Amalie Arena where they looked just loose and calm and cool, and they won 2-1, and it was never even stressful. And a one-goal game in a final clinching game should be stressful. That kind of summed up the Avalanche body language, demeanor, mindset, whatever you want to use, the difference between road and home. So, yeah, like we all want them to win the Central, maybe even win the West, but then that also gets them that home ice advantage, which, again, no one's going to turn down home ice advantage. That sounds so silly to even bring it up, but you go look at the records. They're a better road team than they are a home team, and they proved that again these last 4 games. Hopefully tonight they can have a laugher against a bad team, but for whatever reason, they are just looser on the road, and they look like they skate a little more tight at Ball Arena.
RJ says, talk about speed. NHL is crazy fast. I can't even imagine. I can barely ice skate. Like I can barely just move, so I can't even imagine getting on the ice with any of those guys. But how impressed have you been with Nathan McKinnon, the way he's kind of handled all the adversity he's seen this season?
Yeah, he flipped a switch in what, about, I don't know, early February, it feels like. It feels like it's been about 6 weeks now that McKinnon just sort of flipped this. It's coffee break, so I'll say it. This FU switch, you know? Yeah. This I'm kind of on a mission, and no one's going to take my trophy, right? Like, Stanley Cup's mine, no one's going to take it. Cale was a very worthy Conn Smythe winner last year, but if they go on to do it again this year, which I know is a long ways to go, doesn't it feel like Nathan McKinnon had come for his Conn Smythe this year? He has flipped on a new gear. His goal in Detroit yesterday, Rachel, or Saturday in Detroit, was like so peak Nathan McKinnon. Just takes the puck, skates through 3 defenders, and just has this slick little wrist shot that the goalie never even sees. And next thing you know, it's in the back of the net. He is he's their best player, for sure. He's also their most valuable player, I would go ahead and say at this point, which, as we know from the Jokic debates over the years, best and valuable are a distinction. But he's both of those right now. And Connor McDavid's going to win the Hart Trophy, but Nathan McKinnon shouldn't be far behind. It'll hurt him that he, missed some time with injury, missed that month or whatever earlier this year. But Nathan McKinnon looks to be as valuable as anyone in the NHL right now.
Which is so funny because Mikko is the favorite right now out of the 3 of them when it comes to Makar, McKinnon, and then Rantanen. And he had an incredible beginning part of the season. But then you're right. It seems like McKinnon and Makar have really stepped up as of recent. And so his name's kind of been taken away. But that doesn't mean his productivity has been taken away any means on the ice.
No, not at all. And we've lauded tons of praise on Mikko, that Mikko kept this ship afloat. Because Cale missed time, Nathan missed time, Gabe hasn't played all year. Mikko's been the only guy outside of really Arturi Lehkonen, who's now out, who has consistently been out there all year because Nichushkin was hurt too. So it's a testament to Mikko, and no one's dismissing Mikko's contributions, but Mikko's just kind of been steady, which is great. We'll take steady all the time. Whereas McKinnon, like I said, the last 6 weeks or so is playing on a different freaking planet. I mean, he's just been unreal.
Well, you mentioned it. They are going to be playing a pretty bad team later tonight, which is the Blackhawks. The Avs are heavy favorites. Are you jumping on that?
Yeah, I think you have to, right? I mean, you can't take them to win the game because that's like minus 500. There's no value there. I mean, you could, but you got to put up a lot of money to win just a little bit. But Rachel, I would feel comfortable taking them minus the 1.5. I mean, they beat them 5-2 on opening night here. You were there that night. That's the only other time they've played Chicago and Denver this year. The Blackhawks have the second fewest points in the Western Conference, only ahead of the hapless Sharks. I think we're looking at hockey tacos tonight, Rachel. I think the Avs take it something like 7-3.
I'll take it. Man, that Chicago game feels like a lifetime ago, though. Like, now that you said that, I'm like, holy smokes, October feels like so long ago. I'm just ready for the playoffs to get rolling for both the Avs and the Nuggets. I'm like, let's just get there.
Jack Johnson, Rachel, remember he was here playing for Chicago, and now he plays for the Avalanche. So, yeah, it does feel like a while ago.
That's actually a really good storyline to follow for tonight, too. All right, moving on to the Nuggets, because they've obviously had their struggles as of recent. However, they do get a win. But this is kind of an interesting storyline, too, of MPJ is emerging. Like, we knew he was going to be good. I've been very critical of MPJ. I'll admit that. And you know what? He's proven me wrong. I'm totally fine with it. But he's really been emerging. Who do you want to have the big shot, Jamal Murray or MPJ?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, you're right. MPJ has gone from arguably their fourth best player to their second best player
Yeah.
the last few weeks. Aaron Gordon just hasn't looked the same since the injury. Jamal was really good in the first quarter yesterday. He went for 20. It was crazy. And then he finished the game with 25. He kind of slowed down, whereas MPJ has been very, very consistent. He's kind of like the Avs version of Mikko Rantanen if you want to make Jokic McKinnon. So to answer your question, if I need one big shot right now, I'm taking MPJ to make that big shot. He's confident right now. He's smooth. Obviously, Michael Malone benching him a few games ago made absolutely no sense. I don't want to pit the two against each other because they both have their strengths, and I'm fans of both of them for sure. But if you made me pick, Jokic has got to kick out to one or the other with the game on the line. He can kick it out to MPJ in my book.
Well, and again, we're not trying to pit them against each other. I love that you say that. But only one person can get the ball in the moment. But I also think we both would say Jokic should take the shot. But we also know that he's not that type of player. Like, he will most likely toss it out to somebody else. But I think I'm with you. And that's actually very surprising. You know, at the beginning of the season when Jamal was really kind of getting back into that rhythm, I couldn't imagine having this conversation. But MPJ, like you said, he's just been so consistent as of recent that you kind of have to. And he's played less games than Jamal has. And I believe he's got a better field goal percentage and 3-point percentage too in there. So I feel like you got to give it to him until he starts to fall off.
Well, and I have a question for you. With MPJ, obviously the health is the number one issue. But do you think with him too, when he had 3 back surgeries, that there's a mental confidence that he's finally regaining? Because, knock on wood, we're knocking on all the wood, this feels like the healthiest stretch of his career, Rachel, where we're finally talking about the basketball with him and not is the back going to act up with him?
No, and I mean, that's a great point. I sure hope so. Yeah, literally knocking on all the wood around me because maybe we are just kind of seeing the full MPJ potential. And we've always talked about it. We've always said the ceiling is, yay high for him, and we've never gotten close to seeing it. So maybe we actually are. And gosh, you just hope he stays healthy. Like, this Nuggets team cannot have any injuries going forward. And I know there's a little bit of concern with what's happening with Jamal right now, but it's just they have to stay healthy, Will. If they don't, the playoffs could be very, very scary.
Well, they have to stay healthy. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the number one key of the season. And they have to make tough decisions, perhaps, these last 12 games of the regular season on Aaron Gordon and on Jamal Murray. How much do you play them? How much do you sit them? Because Gordon has not looked the same since he came back. Rachel, we were talking All-Star game with Aaron Gordon, and he is not playing at an all-star level right now. And I don't blame Aaron Gordon. I think the shoulder, the ribs, whatever it is still beat up. Yeah. And with Jamal, they're now adding both knees to the injury report, right? It's this left knee issue and this right knee issue. And we can no longer even say, oh, well, it's no longer the surgically repaired one. No, that one's back on the injury report too. And it's both of them. So yes, you want to win the West. Yes, you want to have momentum going into the playoffs. But how much do you risk that with Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon being on the court? Rachel, the return of Zeke Naji yesterday gives them some flexibility with Aaron Gordon because it adds another legitimate big man that they can put Gordon on the bench for a few games. Mm-hmm. I would not hate seeing the two of them in street clothes multiple times down the stretch.
Are you team rest or are you team go all out till the end of the season?
So James Maryland will be on with us a few minutes, and he hates load management, right? It's like it's his anti-load management thing. I'm not the biggest load management guy, but when the play is suffering, yes, you have to load manage. Mm-hmm. Gordon and Murray, their play is not as good right now as it was at other points in this season. So therefore, load management makes sense. I think just giving a random night off when a guy's totally fine, I'm kind of on James's side. Whereas giving nights off to heal and to get better and to make sure you're 100% healthy entering the playoffs, you would be silly to not take advantage of those. So in the case of Murray and Gordon down the stretch, I am pro, load management because their bodies need it.
So then were you only upset because of the play we actually saw in the losing streak for the Nuggets? Because I know some people were like, these wins don't matter, yada, 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 whatever it is. But I think for most people, they were upset because of how bad the Nuggets actually looked.
Yeah, the only reason I don't know if upset's the right word, but concerned
Yeah.
was because it looked like they had lost their mojo. Like this team that had had so much swagger for the months of November, December, January, February, all of a sudden the calendar turned to March and it just looked like their confidence had hit a bit of an all-time low. So, yeah, I was just concerned of like, these are not the Denver Nuggets I know. This is a team that has fallen off a cliff, for lack of a better term. Now, they played really well yesterday in Brooklyn for 3 quarters. The fourth quarter, of course, it got a little closer than it should have, but hopefully that was the game that flipped the switch, that they kind of reminded themselves, we're the Denver freaking Nuggets. We ran away with the Western Conference this year, and we're going to go to our first NBA Finals, because they have to find that swagger. I keep using that word before the playoff starts, or they're going to be losers in the first or second round of the Western Conference.
We're going to bring in Jake Shapiro too because I want to talk about some George Karl comments on Joel Embiid. But real quick, who worries you the most about the playoffs?
Like which team in the West?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a coin flip between Golden State and Phoenix. Golden State's got the championship experience. Phoenix, bit of a super team when they traded for Kevin Durant. I'm going to lean towards Golden State just because you'd be silly to pick against Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Steve Kerr. But I don't want to see either until the Western Conference Finals, and I'm still hoping that the standings fall where they have to play each other and one knocks the other out before they face the Nuggets.
Love it. Jake Shapiro, how are you this morning?
Good, and I'm ready to officially announce to everyone who listens to Coffee Break, every single person in the NBA, the Denver Nuggets want the Golden State Warriors. It doesn't matter. Like, it's over. The party's over. Get gone. The Warriors are done. Like, this is it. The Warriors can't win a road game. They have a worse record on the road than the San Antonio Spurs. They cannot win on the road. Like, I want the Warriors in the playoffs. The only team that I do not want if I'm the Denver Nuggets is the Phoenix Suns. Everyone else, I'll take. If they lose to the Warriors in the playoffs, it's inexcusable. Like, it is. They're a broken team. Jordan Poole is no better than Bones Highland was for the Nuggets this year. Absolute mess. There's a rift in that locker room between Draymond Green and all the young guys after the punch. The punch ended the franchise. Like, they're done. It's not light years ahead anymore. It's just a mess. I watch them every night, and it's a mess.
Wow. And Jake is very, listen to me, everybody. Here's the thing. No one expected Golden State to come out and win the championship last year. That's why they scare me, because you never know when they're going to turn it on, and all of a sudden they're just like, the greatest team you've ever watched. They worry me so much.
Yeah, this is a be careful what you wish for, Jake. Like, you can spout off on a Monday morning, and I love your confidence, man, but I don't want to have to revisit this clip in a month when the Nuggets lose to the Warriors in 6. So
forget the second round, by the way, Will. The Nuggets could play the Warriors in the first round because the Warriors have dropped into the play-in because they suck.
They do not suck. They do not suck. Those are some fighting words that scare me, my friend. It would be very Nug-like for you to dismiss them as dead, and then that dynasty ends the Nuggets in the first round once again.
Oh, that would be a heartbreak. Edward said, did Jake drink his cup of coffee? Jake, did you have coffee this morning? You're very energetic.
No, I'm just done with the Warriors. And honestly, as the guy who's been like the Lakers stink all year, like the Lakers are a better team right now than the Warriors. They're playing better ball. The Lakers have like the 5th best defense or like the 3rd best defense since the trade deadline. I'd actually be more concerned about hyperbolic chamber LeBron James and the rest of the Los Angeles Lakers facing the Denver Nuggets in the first round than the Golden State Warriors. That's a tougher matchup for the Nuggets right now. So we've been playing this game all year of musical chairs of who scares you in the West. And at one time it was New Orleans. Then everyone got hurt. New Orleans isn't going to make the playoffs. By the way, Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers aren't going to make the playoffs or play in. It's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma City Thunder right now, that's a tough team. Like, there are some teams in the West that you look at and they're like, on a day-to-day basis, they're good. Are we taking the Sacramento Kings seriously enough, or just are we writing them off because they can't play defense? Can the Nuggets play defense? Like, there's some legit questions. The Warriors, to me, not on the list of teams that I'm actually scared of compared to some of these other teams.
Okay. Nuggets can drop to number 2 or number 3 seed if they don't win at least 7 to 8 out of the last 10 games left. So for both of you, before we get into what George Karl had to say, how do you feel? Jake's already shaking his head. So how do you feel about that, Jake?
Well, the math just doesn't line up. They're 4 games up on Memphis and 4 games
Mm-hmm.
up on Sacramento. They don't have the tiebreaker yet on Sacramento, but they play Sacramento for the tiebreaker on the last game of the season,
Mm-hmm.
which the 1 seed could come down to. The Nuggets could literally go 7-3, and the Kings could win all 10 of their games, and the Nuggets would still win the West. So essentially, if the Nuggets win 5 or 6, they're probably fine. Because it's unlikely Sacramento is going to win all those games. And again, the Nuggets have the tiebreaker on Memphis. So the Nuggets nearly have the number 1 seed locked up with 10 games to go. 4 games is almost insurmountable.
Okay. George Karl coming out. Jokic has dropped out to be no longer the favorite for MVP this season, and George Karl went on about Embiid and said essentially he's got, I want to make sure I said it, has lazy body language and takes possessions off, and that's to why Embiid should not be MVP. Will, what do you think about Embiid's play, and do you think he's got lazy body language?
Well, I love George, and George is awesome, and love talking to George on the radio
So
on
fun.
104.3 The Fan. George is my guy. But
Mm-hmm.
also, Phillies won 8 in a row, and Embiid scored at least 30 points in 9 straight games. So, George makes some points that I can see what he's talking about. You watch him every possession, and there is times where he looks disinterested, but also like you can't ignore that the 76ers are shooting to the top of the Eastern Conference, and Joel Embiid is putting the ball in the bucket at an unbelievable rate. So I don't disagree with George's points, but I
Mm-hmm.
also think the timing is a little bit funny because even as a biased Jokic fan, and I want him to win his 3rd straight MVP, you can't ignore that Joel Embiid has played really well for the hottest team in the NBA recently.
Yeah, Joel Embiid's unbelievable. He's leading the league in scoring. He's scoring efficiently. He's having an all-time season, like a Hall of Fame historic season, just like Nikola Jokic is. Honestly, if Nikola Jokic doesn't win the MVP and it goes to Embiid or Giannis Antetokounmpo, at this point you tip your hat. Like these dudes are unbelievable players, and I obviously want Nikola Jokic to win the MVP just like Will. I think he's honestly deserving still to this point, but Joel Embiid is awesome. There are things that he does during the course of a game that look lazy. Like if his team's shooting free throws late in the game, he won't be the guy that goes to rebound. He'll be sitting in the backcourt waiting for defense, which is lazy because he's the best rebounder on the team. You'd think he'd be there in case his friend or his teammate missed a rebound, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are things Nikola Jokic does on a basketball court during the course of an 82 game season that are lazy. Like look at the last week and a half of Nuggets basketball. Did he play any defense in the first 3 quarters of any of those games? Not really. So if you want to have a lazy discussion and you want to come down to the MVP and who deserves it because they're the least lazy, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo because he works his butt off in every minute of everything he does. But that's not what the MVP is about. And I think it's okay for these guys to take mental breaks while they're working, so to speak, because their job requires so much of them offensively and defensively that there are times where you need to have that switch off while you're on the floor even and go into coast mode. Like, a shark has one brain that goes to sleep while they're sleeping and then the other brain goes to sleep while they're still swimming. Like they need that. They need to go into autopilot at sometimes. So yeah, I disagree with George entirely. But there's a reason why I guess he won a lot of games as a coach. He knows something I don't.
Real quick, for both of you, isn't it so interesting how the big man has become like the main candidate for MVP? Like, do we remember when it was just all about the shooters and all about the threes and yada yada yada? But now it's all about the big man, and I kind of like it that way, to be completely honest. Jakes, you're shaking your head with me.
So in the first 35 years of NBA history, only 3 years did a non-center or power forward win the MVP.
Mm.
Since there have only been 3 big men to win MVP: Nikola Jokic, Shaquille O'Neal, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, Tim Duncan, 4. So the power of the league, as you're noting, Rachel, completely shifted over time. So
Mm-hmm.
simply getting back to where we are right now, where these 3 7-footers are the best players in basketball, is the natural state of basketball, which
Mm-hmm.
is fun to see.
Well,
Well, yeah, and it's guys with a unique skill set, right? Like,
true.
with all due respect to Shaq, Shaq was just a big big dude who would just post up and just dunk over people because he was Shaq. Nikola Jokic is infinitely more skilled than Shaq with his ability to pass the basketball and some of the things he can do on a court that are non-traditional, if you will, for a guy of his size. So that's where the power has shifted, because Jokic he's a point guard in a in a big man's body, right? Just because of the skill set he possesses.
Real quick, did you guys see that Shaq was like in a hospital bed?
Yeah, with his tweet. That was a little concerning.
I was gonna say, what happened? I never heard what happened. I just saw him, being a savage in a hospital bed, tweeting out to everybody. So I was like, did I miss something?
No, I mean, it's like that Family Guy skit where they're like, I'm gonna go post a selfie in the hospital so that people ask me what's wrong. Like, I hope he's okay, but we don't know what's wrong with Shaq. So fingers crossed for the big man. I hope he's all right, but it is kind of like, okay, if you're just going to post that, you got, 10 million followers on Twitter? I think people are curious what's going on, buddy.
Elizabeth, does Shaq fit in a hospital bed? Last one for you, and then James Marilat is going to hop in with us. But Embiid feels like the Aaron Rodgers of basketball, wants his MVPs, but not championships, says Kyle Baker. Do we hate or love this, Will Peterson?
I mean, I know the MVP means a lot to Joel Embiid, right? It means so much more to him than it does Nikola Jokic. He was such a baby when he didn't win it the last couple of years. So, yeah, I'll buy the take a little bit that Rodgers is very concerned about individual awards. We know that. Joel Embiid seems the same way. Rodgers at least has one ring. Joel Embiid has 0 as of right now.
Jake?
I disagree with that. I think he's strong-headed in chasing a championship. There's a reason why they switched coaches. There's a reason why Ben Simmons have been run out of there. There's a reason why he's taken, changed his style of play to fit with James Harden. I think Joel Embiid really wants a championship. And honestly, he'd probably have one right now if Jimmy Butler had stayed in Philadelphia and they had kept Jimmy Butler instead of Tobias Harris. Because Jimmy Butler led a team of way worse guys to one shot away from to an NBA Finals, and then another time, one footstep away from the NBA Finals. So, if Jimmy Butler had stayed, I think the Philadelphia Sixers probably would have won one of these last few World Championships.
All right, Will Peterson, I appreciate you on this Monday. Thanks for hanging out with us as we bring in James Marilat to talk about some cryptic tweets, because my goodness, who doesn't love cryptic tweets on a Monday? How are you, James?
I'm great, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. How was the Players Club?
It was a ton of fun. Always good to hang out with Orlando. Now, cryptic tweets. Did I send something cryptic?
No. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy.
Okay.
You're a very straightforward person, James.
Yeah.
So, no, it's just the guys. We obviously know Cortland. This was a while back. Said, I just want to be where I'm wanted and appreciated. But Jerry Jeudy says, I could turn you into a hater or a motivator. It's all about how you take it. Cryptic tweets, you never know what they mean, but both of these guys have been talked about when it comes to being traded off of the Broncos. So are any of these tweets related, or do you think they're just having maybe a few beverages and putting stuff out there?
Well, no, I think they're related. I think they're hearing the noise, they're hearing the rumors, they're hearing the conversations. And listen, I think to some extent Jerry Jeudy is correct, right? Like, if somebody's being critical of you, you can either call them a hater or you can use it to motivate yourself. So, okay, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It is very cryptic, though, and it's just sort of roll my eyes and, anonymous donors. That's what Sean Payton wanted.
Yeah.
Why do you have to put that out publicly? Just take it as a motivator and go, put in the work and try and prove people wrong. I wrote about it today at denversports.com of you can look at the Broncos free agent moves up to this point, and they all make sense on paper, right? They needed a right tackle. They needed a left guard. They needed to re-sign an inside linebacker. They needed to bring a bridge running back in. They needed to replace Draymond Jones. But it also is a little bit of a purging of this roster. 20% roster turnover in a 72-hour span. And you look at who left, right? Graham Glasgow was rolling his eyes at Russell Wilson on the sideline Christmas Day. Dalton Reisner and Brett Rippon getting in a shoving match that day. They're sending those guys packing.
Yep.
Draymond Jones, who kind of shut it down the second half of the year. After the win in London, he had 5 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss. The rest of the year, I think Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are in conversations and rumors about getting traded for a lot of the same reasons, right? It's Cortland Sutton throwing a tantrum on the field when Russ doesn't throw him the ball. It's Jerry Jeudy and the cryptic tweets. I think Sean Payton wants guys that put, playing football and winning football games at the top of the list, not somewhere on the list. And this kind of stuff is just more fuel for that fire.
Oh, okay. I like it. Definitely check it out, denversports.com. Who's most likely to go, Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton?
I don't think either one of them, so I'm not trying to dodge it. I think the Broncos would most like to trade Cortland Sutton just because of that contract. I think Jerry Jeudy is out there and floated because 2 things. 1, I think you could get more for him. He's got more value. But 2, I think there's a pretty good chance everybody's back. And how do you avoid, hurting feelings? Well, hey, it wasn't just Cortland. It was Jerry and KJ. We were listening to everybody. We were asking for the moon because we think you guys are great. I think a lot of this is, hey, let's see if we can move them. And if not, how do we make sure we don't have hurt feelings? But that group, we had Troy Rink on the Players Club today. The Broncos have the 3rd most expensive wide receiver room in the league in terms of salary cap. They didn't have anybody that sniffed a Pro Bowl, nobody that had 1,000 yards. There were games where it was just like, man, is anybody going to make a play here and help out the quarterbacks? So I think they'd love to move on from that Cortland Sutton contract if they could. I just don't think they'll be able to.
I was going to say, clap for George Payton and that Cortland Sutton contract right there. What a headache. I'm seeing everybody. JJ isn't going anywhere. It brings more back, but no one's doing that. Sutton, Elizabeth said Sutton's going. JJ is going to be more likely to go. He brings a great reward to the Broncos, which is true. If they could get a first round, let's just say they could. Do you take that?
No, because I think you're most likely using that first round pick to replace Jerry Jeudy.
Thank you.
It's like, okay, great. Now you have a rookie who you're not sure what you're going to get out of him. Like, he finally started to kind of blossom a little bit. When he became the number 1 receiver, when he became the X, he put up really good numbers at the end of the year. I want to see, before I decide to, you know what, I'm moving on from Jerry Jeudy, I want to see what he does a full season as the number 1 guy. He should have been it for the last 2 years, but he wasn't. Full season as the number 1 guy, and a full season with Sean Payton not playing in Pat Shurmur's offense or the mess that Nathaniel Hackett put together. I think it's too early to pull the plug. I think you invested all this time and the 15th pick in it. Don't part ways right before you actually get something out of it.
Giovanni says, I hope Tim Patrick comes back to full strength, same injury as Sutton, and look how he has been since injury. I hope he comes back. I had him as wide receiver number 1 going into training camp last year, so it was a huge bummer that, of course, he got hurt, and we hope he does have a really well recovery. That way he can come back. Who has the better chance of being wide receiver number 1, Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick?
Good question. I'm going to say Cortland Sutton because the mystery of how Tim Patrick comes back from the knee injury, none of us know. So I do think it's a little bit different, though. They're both big receivers, but Cortland Sutton relied on his athleticism to make plays, I think, more than Tim Patrick. Like Tim Patrick, before he got hurt, he was never known for going up and getting 90% of 50-50 balls. Like, that wasn't his game. Yeah. That was what Cortland Sutton was best at. I mean, we saw it down at training camp for a couple of years where he was just a machine at those kind of plays. Now that that's gone, it's like, well, what he's got to adapt his game. Tim Patrick wasn't really that guy. Tim Patrick was kind of a, possession receiver. I don't mean that in a negative way, but a possession receiver before the injury. I think it's easier to get back to that. Because that's kind of what Cortland Sutton has had to morph his game into. I don't think either one of them is going to be the number 1 guy. Jerry Jeudy's the number 1 receiver on this team, and he should be.
And you and DMAC and myself believe he could be the best player on this team as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this season. Let's move on, though. Did the Broncos miss out on a key defensive player? And that is CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's headed to the Lions. A lot of people had linked him to the Broncos. Did they miss out?
Yeah, when you look at that contract, it's like 1 year, $8 million, 6.5 guaranteed. So as a 1 year deal, actually, would have been a little bit tricky for them because you can't, get creative with the accounting. It's all going to count this year against the cap. Yep. But it does sort of make you think of like they couldn't have got a 2 year deal for 16 and got creative with it. But I think Gardner Johnson looked at it and said, I'm only going to sign a 1 year deal because I want to get the big money that I passed on with the Eagles. I mean, that guy had to fire his agent. Talk about misplaying your hand. So I think the Broncos were out of it when it turned into it's a prove it deal. It's a 1-year thing because they couldn't get creative to make the salary cap, make it work within the salary cap.
The Panthers. Seems like they're adding people all the time. They are really just starting to load up. How hot or warm or cold, I guess, even if you want to, is the water for them when it comes to what they have to produce next season and their win category?
Well, they're going to have a rookie quarterback, right? So that I think that tempers
Number
things.
one.
Yeah. I mean, look, they're going to get the best guy out there, whoever they determine is the best. Is it Bryce Young? Probably. But they are going to have a rookie quarterback. There are going to be some growing pains. They're going to surround him, though. Usually a quarterback taken number 1 overall is going into a bad situation, whether that's the organization, the coaching staff, the talent on the roster. Well, you look at the Panthers. David Tepper's got, short of the Walton Penner family ownership group, all the money in the world. Yeah. Frank Reich is a guy who's, been a proven coach in this league. And with all the talent they're adding around him, it does set up for, a rookie quarterback to have some success because it's not going to be all put on him. Mm-hmm. That's when these guys tend to fall flat, when it's you got to come in, you got to be the savior, you're the number 1 overall pick, you got to do everything. It's the old drinking out of a fire hose when you're a rookie quarterback. So I do think that'll help a little bit, but they should temper expectations. If they get anywhere near 500, that would be a really good season with a rookie quarterback.
So my big thing is when you bring in a rookie quarterback there's so much pressure there, but you also have all of these veteran guys who are coming in wanting to win. Like they're leaving what they know and they're going somewhere new in the hopes of wanting to win. If you can get the knocking of heads, right? You're like, oh my gosh, you're the number 1 pick. You should be able to come in, be top star NFL quarterback right off the bat. So I just wonder if there's going to be any knocking of heads when it comes to some of these veteran players that are coming over with this big idea in mind. And if you don't see that right off the bat with a rookie QB.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in the last 6 years here in Denver, maybe even the last 7, where there's been this battle between the defense and the offense, right? Of the defense saying, hey, we're doing our job. How about you guys pick it up? Now, it wasn't a number 1 overall pick as a quarterback, but we saw that, one side was doing their job, the other side wasn't. Yeah. If you get to mid-season and the Panthers are 2-6 and their defense is playing really well, and a lot of it is because their rookie quarterback just keeps making mistakes that get them beat. Yeah, you can start to see that. I don't think you'll see it early in the year. I think there will be a little bit of, grace period, but you get to end of October, you get to Halloween, and you're not winning football games, and it's by and large because of your rookie quarterback, there'll be some grumbling. I just think that's human nature.
If you had to guess, what would you put the Panthers record at?
7-10.
Okay.
And I think that'd be really good with a rookie quarterback. 7-10. If the 10, it's a loss is a loss, right? But they're not all made the same. The Broncos lost to the Rams on Christmas wasn't the same as their loss to, I don't know, pick one where they lost at the last minute. The opener, where they missed a 64-yard field goal. Yeah. Counted the same in the standings, but it wasn't, they were not all made the same. If in those 10 losses they're competitive, they see some flashes, they see some moments where it's like, all right, growing pains, but we'll be able to get through those as time goes on here. I think 7-10 would be a successful season.
Who will have a better defense, Vance Joseph or Ejiro Evero?
Wow. You know what? I'm going to go off, and track record small for Ejiro Evero, but I'm going to go with Ejiro. I have not seen a lot from VJ. Didn't have had a terrible defense in Miami.
Yep.
Inherited a good one here, and it fell apart in his 2 seasons. Yep. He was sort of 50-50 down in Arizona. So I'll go with Ejiro Evero. I think he's going to have more success.
It's definitely an interesting conversation to have, and will the Broncos miss him, or will Sean Payton be able to keep Vance Joseph and everybody on track? So it's going to be interesting for this season. James, I appreciate you hopping on with us for a little bit, though, and to everybody in the comments. As always, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. for another episode of Coffee Break, and we will see you guys then. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody.